7:04. I'd like to call this meeting of the Village Board to order. Clerk Waters, would you please take the roll?
Trustee Eater?
Here.
Trustee Enya?
Here.
Trustee Leving-Jacobson?
Here.
Trustee Straw?
Here.
Trustee Taglia?
Here.
Trustee Wesley? President Skaman?
Here. Okay, thank you. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda as it's been presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Trustee Eater, seconded by Trustee Leving-Jacobson. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And entertain a motion to approve minutes from the January 13 regular meeting of the Village Board. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Trustee Leving-Jacobson, seconded by Trustee Eater. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the minutes have been approved. Village Manager's report.
Thank you, President Skaman. No report tonight.
Okay. So we do have a Citizen Commission vacancy report as provided by the Village Clerk. Anyone interested in serving on a Village Board or Commission can email Clerk Waters at clerk@oak-park.us. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as it's been presented. Did I skip right over that?
President Skaman.
Oh, it's all the way at the beginning.
Non-agenda public comment, and also the proclamation.
Okay. I don't know how I did that.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Efficiency. However, okay, so non-agenda public comment. Do we have any this evening?
Yes, we have one.
Okay.
Michael?
Hello, Michael. Please.
It's been a while. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Gibbs, born and raised formerly from 140 South Euclid. Now I live in the evil empire to the west. Thank you for your commitment and sacrifices to serve the residents of Oak Park. I appear before you tonight with great reluctance. I have a variety of family members that are law enforcement professionals, from FBI agents to police officers. I myself served as 2 terms of trustee for River Forest. Community service is in my family traits. I do not believe in airing dirty laundry in a public forum, but I have been driven to this point by a lack of concern by the Village of Oak Park Police Department. At 12:30 a.m., December 20th, my 22-year-old daughter was returning home and was stopped at the red light at Harlem and Randolph. She was rear-ended, and the offender drove away, leaving his bumper and license plate impaled to the rear of my Mercedes, causing $4,000 damage. Police were called and arrived over 45 minutes later. The responding officer told my daughter, "That's why you have an insurance company." No attempt was made the night of the offense to go to Melrose Park to the residence of the offender to see, heaven forbid, if he was a drunk driver. A crime had been committed. 12 days passed before I was able to obtain a report from the police department to pass on to State Farm to file the claim. After speaking with the patrolman, the patrol sergeant, the patrol commander, I was repeatedly told that it's now State Farm's problem, with the commander actually telling me that Oak Park will make no effort to apprehend the offender. Other police departments have told me that the offender had prior no insurance incident in July. A hit-and-run crime had been committed by a repeat offender, and nothing is going to be done by the Oak Park Police. I can't even get a return phone call from the day commander. Multiple other friends that serve in police departments have told me, quote, "Oak Park won't do anything." Nearly 80 years ago, my grandfather was the police commissioner of the Oak Park Police Department. Times have not changed for the better. As the elected officials of Oak Park, I don't blame the police. I blame leadership. Are you okay with this reputation that you have in the community and the greater community of what your police department will do with this incident? I'll ask an even simpler question. What if it was your daughter?
Thank you for making sure we're aware of that situation. Okay. Our village manager is stating that he will share a response with you, as I believe we'll get an update as well. So we can follow up appropriately. Thank you. Do we have any other public comment this evening? Okay. And then with no village managers' reports, we went through the vacancy, oh, and I'm doing it again. Proclamation. I would entertain a motion to approve a proclamation recognizing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the village of Oak Park.
So moved. Are you done? So moved.
Second.
No. Motion by trustee Loving Jacobson and second by trustee Wesley. And I've asked trustee Enya if you'd please read this proclamation for us aloud.
No problem. Be my honor. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, January 19th, 2026. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., born January 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, was a transformative leader of the American Civil Rights Movement whose moral clarity, courage, and commitment to nonviolence reshaped the nation's conscience and advanced the cause of racial justice. And whereas Dr. King's leadership was deeply informed by his faith, his family, and the influence of his father, the Reverend Martin Luther King Sr., a respected pastor and civil rights advocate who instilled in his son the enduring principles of dignity, service, and social responsibility. And whereas alongside Dr. King, Coretta Scott King emerged as a civil rights leader in her own right, sustaining and expanding the movement for justice and peace, preserving Dr. King's legacy, and reminding the nation that the work of equity requires persistence, courage, and collective action. And whereas Dr. King taught that everybody can be great because everybody can serve, and called upon individuals and communities to measure their lives by their service to others, a call that continues to guide communities striving to build understanding, equity, and mutual respect. And whereas the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on April 4th, 1968, at the age of 39, was a profound loss to the nation and the world, underscoring both the cost of confronting injustice and the urgency of continuing the work to secure civil and human rights for all people. And whereas the United States Congress established Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s Day as a federal holiday to honor his life and legacy, and designated it as a national day of service, encouraging Americans to transform remembrance into action by strengthening their communities through service and civic engagement. And whereas the Village of Oak Park strives to embody Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision of a beloved community as a group of people that could come together to solve any social issue, division, or struggle. One of the greatest strengths of Oak Park is the diversity of its people who come from many different walks of life. May we never lose sight of this as a unifier and never sow division. And whereas the most poignant questions we hear in the Village of Oak Park must ask ourselves, what will the legacy of social and civil rights in Oak Park? What will be the legacy of social and civil rights in Oak Park? What are we willing to sacrifice to continue to be a leader in social justice? What will the youth in Oak Park inherit and learn from our actions or lack thereof? As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stated, the ultimate measure of a man/person is not where he or they stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he or they stand at the time of challenge and controversy. May we commit to banishing our comfort zones in our pursuit of racial and social justice and carry the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King along the way. Now therefore I, Chibi K. Enya, and the Village Board of Trustees for the Village of Oak Park, do hereby proclaim January 20th, 2026 as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the Village of Oak Park, and urge all community members to observe the anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birth as a time of reflection, learning, and service on racial and recommit themselves to advancing equity, justice, and opportunity for all. Although his legacy and the legacy of his wife, Coretta Scott King, are unparalleled, we all can and must commit to creating our own legacy of social justice here in Oak Park. Dated this 20th day of January 2026.
Thank you for reading that out loud, and thank you to our staff and Village Clerk's office for bringing this proclamation forward annually with thought and preparation into the words that we're sharing with our community. I was going to share some comments for the end of the meeting, having, along with some protests that happened during the day today that I support. But the proclamation itself is making me want to just share these words of Martin Luther King and reserve my comments for, again, at the end.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper.
Hold on, I'm trying to time this so that I can hear.
Just be true.
Jesus Christ, sorry.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. So just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. All we say to America is be.
Okay, so there's nothing that I could say better than Martin Luther King said himself. We serve and protect to, our constitutional rights, the right to freedom, the right to freedom of speech, press, and to protest. And thank all of my colleagues for their service to our community. And we, as we said in the proclamation, are committed fully to continuing to fight for justice for all. Any other comments? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Did we have a motion?
Yeah, on the proclamation. It was moved and seconded.
Who motioned and seconded for the record?
Jenna, and then I second it.
And that I remember. Okay, thank you. Well, I'm the one who kind of started things a little scattered, so we're all caught up, all on the same page, and in our service and in our meeting this evening. Thank you.
Do we
Don't
do
want
we
this
do
to
the all in
start
favor?
Making noise again.
We should
All
do the
in
all in
favor?
Aye, there we go.
Aye.
So then I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as it's been presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The consent agenda's been approved. Regular agenda, we have a study session to review proposed energy grant guidelines for 2026 and other energy efficiency-related programming. I'll turn it over to Village Manager Jackson.
Thank you, President Skaman. I'm going to turn this over to Lindsay Rowland-Naratka, Chief Sustainability Officer, and just acknowledge Deputy Village Manager Ahmad Zayed is providing support for the Office of Sustainability and Resilience. Lindsay.
Thank you very much. Lindsay Rowland-Naratka, Chief Sustainability Officer. So tonight we are going to go over a few concepts that staff have for new programs, as well as review the results of the 2025 energy grants and present recommendations for the 2026 grant guidelines and some other programming that we could do to help us meet some of the goals that we have. So I'm going to start by talking about building construction permits, fees and credits. This recommendation comes out of what we heard here from the board and an interest in waiving fees for specific improvements to properties that relate to energy efficiency, as well as an interest in tracking things like the installation of electric heat pumps and other improvements. So what we are proposing doing is creating a sustainability credit that would essentially be an additional permit category that would have a negative value to it. And this will be designed to cover the permit fees of that improvement as well as other fees. We have $100,000 budgeted in fiscal year 26, the sustainability budget, to support this sort of waiver type program. So we're proposing the credits because that makes it easier to track the specific improvements. And we're also proposing adding an energy fee to building permits that relate to the building itself, the envelope and inside the building, essentially anything that could conceivably impact the energy use of the building. So it wouldn't cover fences, driveways, anything that's not related to the building. In 2025, we had approximately 2,700 such permits, and so a $40 fee on top of that would equal about $100,000 a year, making this program revenue neutral, which is our goal. So the benefits of this is allowing us to better track these projects of interest. It would create a revenue stream to support the credits, as well as provide an additional incentive for electrification. So we're proposing creating these credit categories for specific improvements of interest, such as electric heat pumps, hybrid heat pump systems, insulation, renewable energy, electrical work, and electric water heaters. We're pricing the credits at $190 because that will cover mostly the building fees, which are between $150 and $175, depending on the project, and the $40 energy fee, essentially canceling those out on the building permit fees. Slightly smaller on the hybrid heat pump because we recognize that's not fully electric, but we also want to encourage everyone to improve the efficiency of their furnace, even if fully electric is out of reach. And so with the feedback we received tonight, we'll incorporate that into the credit guidelines and bring those back to you hopefully next week for approval. And then when Development Services brings forward their fee schedule, you'll see these fees on there as well. For the energy grants, we want to start with just going over the 2025 results. So we did outreach in the community to make sure that people were aware of the grants. We worked with One Earth Collective and Climate Outreach Oak Park to help us expand our reach beyond our office and our standard village outreach. We included information in the OPFYI, in social media posts, the e-news. Staff from my office and neighborhood services were out at multiple events throughout the community. And of course, our very talented communications team made a promo video starring our deputy CFO. And of course, we had support from OPCAN, Interfaith Green, and other community partners. This resulted in us receiving 84 applications. We had a lot of interest in weatherization. We saw in our lower income tier a large interest in windows and doors, and renewable energy being popular with our higher income tier. Just a reminder of what our guidelines were in 2025. We had 3 tiers, our tier 1 being below 80% AMI. These households were also eligible for the CDBG energy grants. That was a $10,000 grant and a $5,000 grant from CDBG with no match. The second tier was for households between 80 and 120% of the area median income. That was a $5,000 matching grant. And then the third tier was for households above 120% of the area median income. That was a $1,000 grant. So some lessons that we learned from 2025, we found that being able to pay the contractor directly was beneficial for all income levels. We started out offering it just to tier 1, but it was beneficial across the board, so it was available to everyone. We heard that the application process could be a challenge, and so we will be proposing some changes to help streamline that. We spoke frequently with OPCAN and their climate coaches, and they shared that even for households at the higher income level, the initial capital outlay was a challenge. We'll address that with some of our recommendations as well. We heard that there is an interest in supporting appliances that are not currently allowed under the grant program, things like induction stoves or window heat pumps. And we also participated in a technical assistance program with Argonne National Laboratory that produced a report that demonstrates the benefits of focusing energy efficiency programs on our multifamily housing stock. We provided a memo about that, I believe, last week, and then there will also be a presentation from Argonne next week on that as well. So we are going to be recommending some changes to the guidelines, mostly clarifying eligible costs, clarifying what's eligible under the HVAC systems, clarifying that water heaters can be a gas to electric conversion or an electric to more efficient electric conversion, as well as adding some clarifying language around EV chargers and EV-related infrastructure, as that was something we heard from the board as well. We recommend removing the matching requirement for all grants. We will be encouraging but not requiring the energy assessment. In part, this is because we will be opening our Energy Navigator, hopefully in the next month or two. And so free energy assessments will be available. We'll be encouraging people to go through that program prior to doing the projects that they're submitting for their grants. We will be encouraging but not requiring 3 bids. It is good practice to get multiple bids, but we do recognize that this has been a barrier for some applicants this year. And we're also removing the requirement for 12 months of energy bills with the application. We are still going to be asking for this so we can track improvements, but we are just not going to be asking for it as part of the application. So our recommendations for 2026 is that for the energy grants, we increase the amount for the lower income households. Increasing the grant from $10,000 to $20,000 for our households at 80% AMI and below, we believe will allow those households to do larger, more impactful projects and possibly reduce the barrier to entry for more of our lower income households. For households between 80 and 120 AMI, we recommend keeping the $5,000 grant, but removing the matching requirement. I spoke with OPCAN today, and they recommend raising that to $7,500. And for the 120% or above, we recommend eliminating the $1,000 grant. And instead, we're suggesting that we create an energy loan. This would be a $10,000 no-interest 5-year loan with annual repayments that would be open to any household at any income level. This could allow to overcome that capital outlay problem that we heard of for even our higher income households, as well as help the middle and lower income households perhaps invest in larger projects with that additional financing. In addition to that readjustment of the existing single-family household and small multifamily program that we have, we are also presenting the idea of creating a multifamily property loan. This came out of that technical assistance from Argonne, which demonstrated that that was a really good place for us to focus to get significant energy savings. So we recommend creating a revolving loan, again, a 5-year no-interest loan of up to $150,000 per property or $10,000 per unit. We also have heard this interest in rebates or for allowing a financial incentive for appliances that are not currently part of the energy grant. With the energy grants, with the amounts, and just historically, we are looking to support improvements which are improvements to the property themselves, more permanent installations. With the appliances, because they are not typically the expense of what's allowed in the grant, and because they are more easily moved, a rebate system is more typically what's used. And we are in conversations with ComEd and how they can support us and how we can align our potential rebate program with theirs. With all of these recommendations, this would create about $350,000 that would be revolving loan funds, which means that that would come back into the sustainability fund a little bit year after year so that we can put that back out and just continue making grants and improving properties in the village. So for our next steps, once we hear our feedback from you all tonight, we anticipate bringing forward guidelines for the grants, the loans, and the sustainability credits at next week's meeting for approval. You will also hear from Development Services about their fee schedule related to that, and then with your feedback and with your direction to move forward, we will bring back program designs for the multifamily loan and the equipment rebate. And so now I'm here for feedback.
Thank you. Okay. Derek.
I'll start. I very much want to hear from my colleagues as well. I'll start. I'll get it started. First, thank you for bringing all this forward. This is a lot, and I think it's very encouraging. I'm overall very supportive of all these initiatives. Going back to November and December, and I was advocating for more funding for sustainability, and here you are coming back, and here's how we're going to spend it. So I love that. So thank you. I guess we'll start with the permit fees, and I had sent an email about this. I saw you all had responded to it. I was just kind of curious about the fees themselves. Does this cover 100% or more or less? And it sounds like the answer is yes. It does cover most or roughly 100%, because, or maybe you could say more about that.
More or less, yes. So the 190 is designed to cover all or almost all of the permit fee plus the energy fee.
Got it. Okay, wonderful. And that's all.
Yeah, except for the hybrid, which is half.
Which is half, right? The 95. I saw that. Yes. And that's all going to be handled through the City View platform, right?
Yes, that will be administered through Development Services and the permitting department.
I've played around with that system a little bit. It is a little complicated. Do you have have you talked about how that would be implemented? Is this gonna? How long would it take to set it up, for example, in City View to add these new ways of managing the fees and all of that? Do you have a sense of that?
I don't have an exact number of days it will take, but it will be set up.
I don't need that specific, but
it will be set up within the City View system as they are updating their permit fees for the new year. Okay. So it should be fairly seamless. Yeah.
So we meet with we meet with City View weekly.
Okay.
With Development Services, Neighborhood Services, VMO. We are constantly configuring the system to any necessary changes. So this would just fall into that cycle, and we would be proactive in getting these changes to happen as quickly as possible to apply.
Okay, great. And you'd mentioned that because we're going to be adding these fee structures, it'll give us a way to like start to track these things in more detail.
Correct.
So the city, going to give you like a report or some way to access that in an easier way? I know it's been somewhat challenging to maybe get that data out
Yes.
as it currently stands.
Yes, so the permits, as I understand it, are more general. It would be an HVAC permit. It wouldn't be a heat pump permit. So this way, we're essentially creating a way to make a heat pump permit.
Okay.
Querying by category.
Right,
Those
making it easier to query.
Okay, yeah. As long as they can make it easy for us to get the data out,
Yes.
that's what's important. So that's great. I think, the only other comment I have on the permitting side is, permitting is already really complicated, and this is another thing you have to explain. So I guess I'm curious what your plans are to help roll this out so that the contractors, I understand it's mostly contractors using that permitting system, but what does that rollout kind of look like to make sure everyone's educated about what these new categories are going to be and all of that?
Yeah, we'll make sure to communicate it as we communicate about the energy grants. It can be communicated with especially for the residential, through the energy navigators as they're helping them work through the permitting. And then we'll also do outreach to our contractors to make sure that they know it's there. It will be an additional step. They'd have to select the permit, but that's why we've created the credit, so there's an incentive to do that.
Okay, great. And then on the energy grants, I saw it was great to get the counts by the different categories. Do you have a total amount that was spent in 25?
The amount spent is more difficult, and I don't have a final number yet because not all the applications have been totally closed and paid out. We have, of those 84, 19 have been fully executed. Okay. So we will, in the next few months, have the final numbers.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great whenever you have that finalized. That'd be good to know where we ended up landing, and as we're making changes to it. I'm very glad to see that we're looking at the application process itself. I know that form was like kind of long. It was like a lot of text. So my comment on that is anything you can do to make that form shorter or to break it up into different steps is always going to make things easier for folks. So whatever you can do on that would be great. I think I know the answer to this, but including induction stoves, that was a recommendation that Okie Cannon had. It's kind of like an entry-level thing if you're starting to electrify. It's an easier upgrade to make. So is that explicitly going to be allowed now under these different programs?
If we are given the direction to pursue creating the rebate program, then induction stoves would be included within that.
Okay, and those are like the installed ones, not like the cooktop with the cooktops that sort of sit on your counter. Does that count?
We would probably tie it to ComEd's rebates, and for them, I think it's the full range.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a little less portable than the other ones. Okay, that's great. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'm also just kind of curious. There's a couple of footnotes, maybe both in the permits and the energy grants, that you're earmarking a certain amount of money, but it may run out. Is that something that could you please report back if you're getting close to that? Because I would love to know. Of course. And then maybe we can find some more funding for this to continue. I would love for this to be a huge success and us to have a lot of uptake. I know that's been the challenge so far in this first year or so of this program. So yeah, if you could report to us on that, that would be really great. I think I will pause there and turn it over to others. Thank you.
I just want to say that I was only being a little teasing, and we very much appreciate your questions and preparedness for the meeting always. And Trustee Straw.
Thank you for this. I really appreciate the recommendations here, and I'm particularly excited about the interest-free energy loans approach. I think that taking that approach makes a lot of sense, especially with the higher income applicants, where maybe the upfront capital is a challenge for some of the improvements they want to make. And I'm definitely supportive of the rebate program that gets at some of those electrification things that maybe aren't the bigger ticket items that we're focusing on in the other components. I do have some questions around the permit fees and the sustainability credits, because one thing we always hear from residents who are undertaking construction, especially when that construction is of a more urgent nature, is that the permit fees already can feel high, and here we're adding an additional permit fee on top. $40 as a flat item. How does that sort of, are most of the permit fees we're looking at right now in the $150 range? Are we talking about adding, more than 25% on top of most permits that people are getting?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Yeah, so I have some concerns about that as a revenue source, because if I need to do a plumbing task, which is something, on the interior of the home, and I'm paying an additional $40 permit fee because I've got a leak in my wall and I have to have drywall removed and the plumbing repaired and what have you, I'm already facing a significant unexpected expense, and the additional $40 permit fee sort of feels like adding insult to injury. I guess with the credits we're looking at, this $100,000 in sort of expected credits that we're talking about, is that assuming a significant uptick in the types of projects that are happening, or is that this based on our estimate of how many of these heat pumps, hybrid heat pumps installation has been happening in recent years?
So when we came up with $100,000 for the budget, we looked at the permits for a 12-month period, middle of 24 to middle of 25, and how many of those that we estimated were of these of interest, and then added a little bit with the idea that having an incentive would increase the number. So it is roughly based on historical data and an expectation that there would be an increase. I will also say that we do have $100,000 budgeted for this year to cover those credits. And so the fee and the credits are not necessarily inextricably tied to each other as well.
So I guess I'm in favor of the credits. I'm not in favor of a fee that sort of applied across the board. I would be in favor of potentially looking at a fee, an energy fee that is tied to projects that maybe we disfavor, but not one that's just all, like, that is disfavoring all construction, because I certainly don't think that's a stance that we have in this village. We want people to improve their homes, and we don't want to discourage people from doing so. And, $40 on its own doesn't necessarily feel like a large discouragement, but, $40 here, $40 there starts to add up. So I would be in favor of doing the sustainability credits, seeing what that ultimately ends up looking like, and then we can talk about whether we need to add an additional revenue source for that, because it's exceeded expectations, and what that should be. But I don't necessarily want to just add another permit fee to all projects.
Okay. Corey.
Figured I'd go next because I'm just going to say what Brian said. First, thank you. I think it's a great presentation. The data is really good. First thing I want to call out is I don't like adding additional cost to housing. And that's what the permit fee does. So I'd rather us figure out another way to generate that revenue. Where is it? I just highlighted it. Here we go. Page 11 on the slide deck. So there's the energy grants and energy loans. So there's a huge difference between less than 80% AMI and then 80 to 120 AMI. Huge difference in the grant amount, not a huge difference in the practicality of the income bracket. Wondering if we could do something to make that delta, shrink that delta down a little bit, because I'm not sure if you're an 80 to 120, if $5,000 is going to convince you to do anything.
That is part of the reason why we created the loans to be for any household income and not just the higher household bracket, which was the first thought that we had. And so that if in the 80 to 120, there's the $5,000 grant plus the $10,000 loan that would bring that up to $15,000 upfront that would be available. Got it.
I have the same worry, though, about the $10,000 loan for folks in that income bracket, even though it's interest-free. I mean, that's obviously great. Just thinking about being in 80 to 120% and then having a $10,000 loan tacked on your already stressed finances because you're trying to live in Oak Park on an AMI of 80 to 120%, and I don't see this getting done. So I think we might need to rethink the brackets here a little bit in terms of what's for that middle income.
Trustee Wesley, we did change this from the existing program where there was a 50% match. So we did get rid of that 50% match. So there isn't necessarily any out-of-pocket cost for those homeowners if they wanted to stay within the 5,000 grants and not do an additional $10,000 loan.
Got it.
So there's that, flexibility there.
Okay, I follow you. So we basically, instead of saying it's a $10,000 program where you got half of it's going to be a grant, half of it you pay back, or instead it's a $5,000 program, you don't have to pay any of it back, and you also have the option of taking a $10,000 no interest loan. Gotcha. All right. Well, then I'll be interested to see how many people avail themselves of this. I'd just be interested to see how that plays out. I'm not optimistic, but I could be wrong.
Can I ask, is there an amount that sounds more appropriate?
Not sure, really, but it was just looking at it where there's a $20,000 gap, $20,000 grant, and a $5,000 grant. That delta is pretty huge, and the delta between 80 and 120, or less than 80 and 120%, it's not all that huge practically in Oak Park. So that's just kind of my logic on it. I don't really know if there's I don't have a number in mind yet. I could come back to you with one though. If you give me a day or so.
Did you already say 7,500 was a thought?
7,500 is what OPCAN recommended, and I believe that was based on the loss of the tax credits for this year.
I think that's more doable. I mean, there's probably better ways to calculate, but I think moving it up at least $2,500 helps a person in that bracket make a little bit more of a decision, just knowing what some of those things cost. I did upgrades to my house, and just to do the part of the trench work and update the electrical panel was $7,500. Plus obviously they've got to get their money too. So your contractor hits you over the head on top of that. So that's just knowing what some of these projects could end up costing. I think helping out a little bit more will incentivize that. And but I did hear great things about the village from them about the permit process.
Oh, good.
They actually, one guy said our electrician said, "Hey, it's a little bit hard. I haven't had to always do this before," and I told him about the tax credits, and he was like, "Okay, that makes sense." So he understood that. The other people who did the building construction around my house and some other work said that you all were phenomenal, and they've been working with Oak Park for a long time, and that it's always been pretty straight to the point, and they understand it very well. So And I didn't tell them that I worked here. So, I appreciated it, and the grant process was pretty straightforward. When I had any questions, I actually reached out and talked to the department, and they gave me thorough answers. You know, I got a little worried just because some of the documentation that you have to give back and forth and trying to get your contractor to give you the right form. And I'm like, this is not an invoice. This is not an invoice. This is a purchase order. I need an invoice. And wondering if they're sending you all the right information was an issue, but you all were able to alleviate some of the questions that I had, because there is a strict, amount of things that you want to get done in the back and forth that some of these contractors hadn't seen before. But they were willing to do it. I just think it's not a common practice that they are always going through. But I do believe that when I told others about the program, they're like, wait, what? And it sucked. I felt bad because I didn't do my project till very end. Thank you, Derek, who kind of like pushed me over the edge. And I was like, all right, we're doing this. But it definitely spurred my neighbors. They're like, wait, where is this program? And I'm like, oh, this is a really cool program, but you're too late for the year.
Well, for any projects completed in 2025, the applications are still available until, I think the date's February 6th. So we're still accepting applications for work completed in 2025. And then I also have to say thank you so much for sharing that feedback, and give all the credit to Neighborhood Services, who administers the grant, and Development Services and their permitting staff.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Man, please, yeah, definitely thank them. I was just showing Clerk Waters my solar power capture for the day, and to be able to understand what your array is doing for you, how much solar you're capturing throughout a snowy day. And like my father-in-law is like, you'll never get enough light. So being able to prove them wrong is cool. And to know that that's, a possibility that I would have never done had this grant been there. I would not have done that, I promise you. Because it took a lot of convincing with my wife to be like, hey, we're getting some money back. So I think it's a program worthwhile, and you all do a great job of, OPCAN and Neighborhood Services of putting this together and making it work and making it feasible, and now making it something that's attractive through our community. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that too. A couple other things I want to mention. I totally agree about the paying contractors directly being beneficial. Let's keep doing that. That's awesome. Nobody likes having to go through that back and forth to try to get the check issued and all that. Yeah, that's great. On the changes in terms of energy assessments and the 12 months of energy bills with the application, I think we have to require, I would like us maybe to require one or the other, maybe not both, but I know we're going to ask for those in order to do that baselining. The difference between ask and require, though, often can be a lot of data that we miss.
Yes, the reason we were asking for the 12 months of energy data was so we could follow up later and see what the difference was. And so
Right.
we still intend to do that, but to shorten the application. We were looking at things that we could possibly make a little easier. We're happy to leave that in as well.
I'm fine with it, like being a post hoc sort of thing, but I would like to require it as part of the conditions on the grant.
Okay.
That person in 12 months has to come back and provide that information.
Yeah, we can make the language such for sure.
Okay. Yeah, because otherwise we don't know what impact that we're having, and I don't like throwing money in a hole, right? So there's going to be some of these things is going to work really well. Maybe it's heat pumps work amazingly well with this program, and thermostats don't, right? Like, we'd like to know that kind of thing. What does EV-related infrastructure entail?
So that would be like the trenching, the electrical upgrades to have the charger.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense, yeah. I think that might have been all I have. Yep, that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you so much. I generally support the proposed changes to guidelines. It seemed great to me, especially the increase for the tier 2. I think the best part for me was seeing more or less parity between tier 1 and tier 3. If there's any reflection on how we, or you, your hard work paid off in connecting with enough residents who fell into the tier, and were there any lessons learned about how to make sure that category was informed and they felt the program was accessible to them?
Yeah, I think one of the benefits that we had, particularly in reaching Tier 1 candidates, is that we have longstanding housing programs through Development Services, and the same staff that is administering these grants is administering those programs as well. So we did outreach to participants in previous housing programs. We, as people came in for other things, we directed them to everything that was available to them. I think that the work as well with One Earth Collective and Climate Outreach Oak Park, that they did a lot of kind of grassroots focus, and things that we want to increase in this next year is the direct mailings to homes. I have staff now, so we can be more places, and we intend to just be out in the community more. And then also, we will be launching our Energy Navigator program very soon. And so all of the outreach and the events and the marketing around that will also include language about the energy grants and vice versa. And then as people go through the Energy Navigator program, they'll be directed to the resources that are available to them.
Okay, that's great. That's really smart. Thank you. Similarly, I'm curious about, or for similar reflection on the data that you provided, slide 7, around outreach efforts. And so there's like these numbers of hits, right, and contacts. Do you have any sense or even a quantifiable way of showing like the payoff, of these investments, what was spent and what maybe that generated in terms of applications or successful application?
When we follow up with this year's applicants to get that energy data, we were going to also ask other questions around the program, feedback on the application process, how can we improve? And we can also ask, how did you hear about this? And that's perhaps even something that we could add into the application itself.
Okay, that's great. The only other piece that I wanted to touch on is similar to the question of outreach. And the changes, again, I think I would support, but I had to look at it a couple of times, and so I'm just curious about the thoughts you have about explaining the whole concept of credits and making that not a barrier to, the accessibility of the program or to even like apply, because if someone just thinks, oh, I can do an improvement at a lower cost because of this program, and then there's like a whole non-dollar equivalent sort of system in place. What's your thought on outreach and education and promotion with these changes?
We can create flyers that can be at the permit desk, so when people are coming in for permits, they see it. We can have information on the website as people are going to apply for permits. We'll do that marketing along with the grants to say, with these improvements come, these credits that essentially waive your permit fees, and it will be embedded into the permit application as well. So it will be an option that can be selected and prompted for the right, paperwork and documentation.
Okay, I'm just a little bit like aware that if just having to keep track of something like that for an individual who maybe hasn't worked with, I love that we're touching people who've already here, and that's like a great way of getting services and opportunities to folks. But if we don't, and they haven't gone through a process with us before, I'm just sort of aware that like it might seem overly complex for a project that might also feel overwhelmingly complex. So just to sort of note that the way in which we present, or the way in which, you know, the application and the marketing materials are presented,
Yeah.
especially with this credit program, I think simplify, because we don't, I mean, for me, again, that would, for some things, be a turnoff if I didn't understand what I was applying for, right? And I know there's very smart, educated, environmentally savvy folks in this community, but there's also people who've never done any kind of grant or application or engaged with the, you know, the municipal government. So just something that I wanted to mention. But thank you. Very, very exciting.
Village Manager Jackson, did you want to add something before I go to Trustee Taglia?
No, I think we got it. I think it's great feedback. I think we're structurally set up to do that. I think some of the recent results you see with the partnerships between sustainability and neighborhood services and a more focused effort on not only working with the clientele, but also positioning neighborhood services to get involved in more public engagement. And then I think we'll see more of that as they start to align more with the Office of Equity and get equity involved in the public engagement space. And so I think the points that you're making are well appreciated. And so just some feedback, good feedback.
All right, Jim?
Just a few comments. I'm largely supportive. I want, I just have some questions to understand a little bit better. Thank you for the good work here. Appreciate that. First of all, the amount that we utilized in 2025, you don't have yet because the year just ended, obviously, and but it was, this is kind of vague in here. How close? I mean, could you tell me, did we utilize half, or was it 2/3 or 3/4? Roughly, I know you have a month.
I don't know the exact number. I know that we did not get close to spending the $750,000, which were allocated, which is part of the justification for increasing some of the grant amounts and funding some other programs that we've heard would be of interest.
Okay, so the idea of increasing the amounts, you're sure, based upon what I read here, I mean, what I read was that it's not an education issue. It seems like you've done a lot of work in the village to get the word out that these programs exist, correct?
I think that we have done a lot to make sure that
And I would
people
agree.
know the programs exist. I think that we have some strategies that we've learned from this year that we can employ to make sure more people find out about it next year.
Right. So then increasing these, is that an effort to, is that as a result of, if the education piece was solid, is increasing this, are you trying to, are you hearing from contractors and residents that the size of these projects aren't moving the needle, so to speak? These are, we need to be on a larger scale? Is that what you're hearing?
In short, yes. So we've heard in the higher income tiers that a larger amount to meet that capital outlay would help more people participate. We believe that increasing it in the lower tier would reduce the barrier entry for more people, so that there's less personal outlay that has to be a part of that. We also are looking forward to the programming that we have for this year, including the launch of the Energy Navigator, which will provide people with a roadmap, step-to-step project guidelines with the payback and the cost benefit. And we also believe that that will be inspiring people, encouraging people to do larger, more impactful projects, and we want to be supportive of that. Okay. And we have a particular focus with that as well. We're working very closely with Elevate and building relationships with community-based organizations to make sure that we're reaching more of the tier 1 households, so that we can get those benefits to where they're most needed.
Okay, I ascertained that pretty much from a lot of these things, but I didn't read that this is really what was driving it. But I did hear that the education sounded like it was pretty in good shape. So to be clear, though, the amount on both years is the same, correct? 750,000 in 25 versus 26.
Oh,
The budget
yeah.
number.
For the middle tier, in 2025, it was 5,000, but it was a matching grant.
The total budget.
The total budget.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, 750,000.
So I mean, Derek mentioned about the possibility of using the extra 200,000 or looking for another source if we ran out. Actually, this was severely underutilized. We hope to be fully utilized. The board, I think everyone's in agreement. We'd like to see that money put into play here. But the other money that we allocated would be in addition to, it would be on top of all of these funds. Obviously, we wouldn't necessarily need it for this, although it could come into play if it were wildly successful, I suppose.
Well, this is
Correct.
for the 75.
Yes.
75,000, 750,000. This is for that,
Correct.
that total amount, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But we also put an extra 200,000 in the budget.
Well, to make it 750,000.
To make it
It was
750.
going to be lowered, and then
Okay.
we kept it the same.
So we lowered it because we were under the impression we would not utilize it, and this is in response to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, no, I get how the pieces come together. So I would just say, also, Brian's point was well taken about the amounts, and I think for the sustainability credit, and the only issue is finding a source is difficult when you're doing it kind of on the, going ahead and we're in the midst, and your idea of letting it ride this year, potentially looking back, but my only concern is that I wouldn't want that to be the burden of every resident. I don't think either. That would be something I really wouldn't support. I don't know what the right answer is. There's a balance there, and I'm not sure what it is.
Okay.
But I would be concerned that the if we were just to fund this and give these credits out without an offsetting source in some fashion, that it wouldn't be something I'd like to see personally. But that's everything I have. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that last part is where I don't know if we have enough clarity or consensus from the board yet on what they're hearing from all. You have comments?
I can jump in and add that clarity. Two comments. I appreciate this conversation. This is a great, constructive conversation. It's great. So first is, I forgot to mention, but also +1 for the 7,500 for that middle category. I think that makes sense.
Yes.
I don't think I said that initially. I appreciate the comments raised by Trustees Straw and Wesley about the fees affecting other areas. I'm okay with finding revenue somewhere else, but it does open the question, as Trustee Tagliaferro mentioned, is where, right? And so that might set us up for another conversation, which I know we've talked a little bit about, which is revenue sources for sustainability and just ways to stabilize that fund, because we're currently spending, in my estimate, we need to spend more. That's like my position is always we need to do more. Climate action is desperately needed. The federal government is pulling back, and it's up to local organizations and local municipalities to fill that gap. And because we know we're going to be in the situation in the federal landscape for at least a little while longer. So we have to rise to that challenge. So that's why I continue to advocate for more spending. But we have to figure out a responsible way to continue that. We're going to run out of funding, I think, sometime in 2027 if we kind of keep steady as it goes, no changes at the current spending level. So we do need to have a conversation about those other ways to fund that and to stabilize that that fund in a way that both is equitable, but also does not penalize behavior we don't want to penalize, but incentivizes behavior we do want to see, right? So I think Trustee Stroud mentioned, well, maybe it's not all permits, but if someone's installing a new gas furnace, which is going to set them up for another 15, 20, 30 years of emitting pollution, maybe we want to make that a more expensive choice and incentivize them to not do that and instead do a heat pump instead, right? And so that makes sense, but maybe as the example you gave about plumbing fix, right? That's maybe an unfair thing to levy a fee for. So I think that logic makes a lot of sense, but we need to figure out a way to come up with that delta there. And I'm happy to proceed as is, and have that conversation a little bit later. But it does need to happen for this program, but then all the other ones we care about as well that you are overseeing. So that's where I'll leave it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so is that the will of the board then, is that we're going to get rid of the $40 permit fee that's across the board, but then, as was first mentioned by Brian and Derek is saying, if there's that thing that then is counterproductive to our goals, are we okay with leaving a fee there? So it's not for the emergency fix, but it's for the brand new system that you're choosing to go gas instead of electric. Because currently we have electrification code for new development, new building, and not, so or what, is that what I'm hearing? Are we okay leaving the $40 fee for the new thing you're putting in your home, not the fix? Yes? Corey?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, does that make it tricky to be consistent?
It may make
to
it
consult
tricky. We'll have to consult with development services on that. I will say that we do have $100,000 allocated in this year's budget for this credit program. So if we wanted to run it with just the credits and see about the uptake and see the results this year and bring back the idea of adding a fee later, to Trustee Eater's point, we are going to be coming back soon with a whole, like, a list of options for sustainability fund revenue for you all to consider as well.
Okay. Well, you said we're going to be seeing permit fees come forward in an agenda item across the board, so I guess.
Yes, development services will be bringing back permits fees. So we can consult with them on the possibility of attaching the fee to specific permits, which would be.
Maybe just some smaller slight changes that also.
Right.
I mean, we'll let you look at that, but.
Okay.
It looks like Brian might have more to add, but then I also want to ask if we have fallen on $7,500 then for the mid-range grant. Is that where we've fallen instead of $5,000? Okay, I'm hearing no objection. Okay. And then requiring the 12-month ComEd data. Did you have something more to share, Brian?
Yeah, I guess the one thing I'd say is just on the fees for sort of counterproductive approaches. I want to be able to reserve judgment until I see what that looks like, because I don't know whether, like, what the volume of those projects is. Are we talking about now we're putting a $500 fee on obviously
Yeah.
we're giving, here's an idea, not a here is the path forward, because we don't have the data to see, like, as we move these levers, what numbers they're resulting in to get to the offsetting $100,000.
$1,000 per doorknob.
Those doorknobs are the energy efficiency problem of our day.
Yes, they are.
Okay, so they would chart that out for us and bring it back soon. Jim?
Just a quick question. So maybe I'm not understanding everything here, but the fees in our permitting system in Oak Park are designed to cover the cost of the permit, right? So that we don't make profit. We adjust them every year. We raise and lower them. So these permits that are going to be taken out, these are for, would it be, rather than do a credit with an offset and all this, it seems complicated. Would it make sense to reduce the permit fee, understanding that some of those are really, are they not additive to our permit load? And in that way, we're not taking on extra staff, are we, or no? Is
No.
that like that? So, or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, I think the credits, it's creating a language challenge. But I think, in effect, we're creating in the City View system an acknowledgement of certain types of permits that is not there.
Recording in progress.
Related to sustain these qualified items. And so if you apply for a permit within any one of these categories, it'll automatically reduce your fees, right? And so so it's, in a sense, it's like a waiver.
Right.
It performs like a waiver. We're calling it a credit.
Right.
But it actually performs like a waiver. And I think it is correct. I appreciate the observation about the fees. I think we need to follow up with some additional information from Development Services, because we do set fees based upon cost recovery.
Right.
So I do think we need to provide some additional information on fees, and I think that information is coming along. So unfortunately, they're not here tonight to talk about what their forthcoming proposal is on fees, but we can bring that information back.
Okay.
Yes.
That might be interesting.
Okay, great. So then There was recently, before the holidays or right around the holidays, in between, Planet Green meeting at the library, and much of what, Lindsay was there, Derek was here, Mac was there, that we heard was the need for storytelling. And so as I'm listening to Trustee Leving Jacobson about the language confusion and, the desire that we have to attract all kinds of folks to be pursuing these upgrades and not just those who are already honed in on sustainability. We really need people with the lived experience who've gone through it, Chibi's story, and get those stories out there on a regular basis that are real life scenarios. And then can we do some contractor training so that when people are talking to an architect or a contractor and are deciding to do a new kitchen, they can say, hey, did you know? Especially for architects who are helping people stay within a budget, and designers. This could be a way that they can help their clients stay within their budget and then maybe potentially be able to do more. So I don't know if we can do some trainings for folks like that.
Didn't we have OPCAN do the in-house expert assessment thing? Isn't that part of that building?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was really
asking.
Yeah, no, did OPCAN do some in-house? Well, do we still get the pop-up when we open up the Wednesday Journal, which I don't want to do today, of Derek, pointing to his new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget what the program was called, but it was pretty awesome when they were going around other folks' homes and just kind of, evangelizing. Yes.
Yeah.
I like it's a good word. I like it.
Got the climate coach program.
Climate coach, thank you.
Yeah.
I could not think of that name for the life of me.
Yeah,
And-
the climate coaches is just a phone call, but some of our climate coaches go above and beyond and go to people's homes. So, but that's not always the case.
But President Skaman mentioned the storytelling aspect, and it seems
Yes.
like to me that these would be the folks who would have those stories to tell.
Absolutely.
And would be very passionate about telling them.
Yeah, and I've told my story. It's part of why I'm here, right? So but more of those stories is definitely, a great point, and it's needed.
And we might have come across some people at the counter, in permitting that, would be willing to tell their story too, that are, broadening that audience.
Right.
And, okay,
Maybe we
so,
should set up a studio in Village Hall.
how, were you eavesdropping today? Like, seriously,
Did
man.
somebody say that already?
We had
minds.
we had
It's
a
great
very
minds.
we had a very fun conversation today.
It was awesome. We should do that.
That you would probably be the first person in line, no doubt.
Or what? Yes, solar, the storage, yeah.
Okay, so then that's anything further? Okay, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate the
Thank you.
conversation.
Thank you.
A resolution approving the village board of protocols for 2026 to 2028 as reviewed at the September 3rd, 2025 village board meeting. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by trustee Wesley and seconded by trustee Leving Jacobson. Village manager Jackson.
Yes, President Skaman and trustee members, as you know, we strive to update our protocol, or at least review our protocols after each election cycle. And undoubtedly, there are always some modifications that we consider as part of that process. So we've had some previous discussions and arrived at some recommended changes based upon the feedback we received from you last fall. So Deputy Village Manager Lisa Shelley is going to do a summary and hopefully support a facilitated consensus tonight on the protocols. And if we can't adopt them tonight, I think at the very least we'd like to come back and hopefully get them on the consent agenda with any modifications that you might make tonight for approval next week. Lisa.
All
All right.
right, then.
Thank you. Good evening. Lisa Shelley, Deputy Village Manager. Yes, as Manager Jackson said, attached to this agenda item was a summary with the edits that you can see that were based on the discussion of the study session that you had in September to go over these protocols. I did receive some questions, so I can review those questions that I did receive. And then we can walk through any other sections that you have specific questions, or I can just generally summarize, every page as we go. But starting with the questions I received, the first one had to do with just scheduling and calendars in general, and a reference to the required annual calendar that you adopt at the end of the year. And can that be placed somewhere for the public and the board to see? Because if you look in just Legistar alone, you're only going to see a 3-month outlook. One of the reasons for that is because sometimes the agenda template changes, just as maybe even you adopt goals, just our operations. For example, we may, add a certain criteria in the agenda cover sheet that we would like staff to fill out in explaining the item. And so if we get too far out and that changes, they're working off an incorrect version. So that's the reason for that. But I did talk to communications today, and they did, as one solution, if there's something else that you wanted to suggest, they were able to post under your webpage today, under Village Board, the actual annual calendar. So you can go there and see at least a copy of what that annual calendar looks like that was adopted, every December. So I don't know if there was more on that. That sort of takes or references multiple sections in here about when you'll meet as a board. But was there anything else about that calendar, that annual calendar? I know Trustee Eater,
Yeah,
yes,
I could
this
jump
was your
in,
question.
yeah. And thanks for, responding to that question. I think it makes sense. My only thought is there a way to roll it in? I'm not checking this page, right? I am checking Legistar all the time. I know we always approve a calendar every month or so. Is it possible to put that just on the agenda in January or something? Say, here's the tentative annual calendar, so it's in multiple places, just so we could see, so I don't miss it?
Sure, we can add it to, we do that sometimes, but we can make sure it's just there every time you see your updated calendars. Like you said, periodically, we try to do it monthly. We can just, the second item will always be, or the last item will always be a reminder of the full calendar.
Great.
So
Yeah,
we can put
that
it
would
there,
be
then you'll
great.
always see it as you go along.
And that's the full board as the finance committee meetings? Are those not typically?
They do not have finance
fully?
committee meetings. It is just your regular meetings. And that purpose is to comply with the Open Meetings Act. As you have to at least make that announcement of when they will be. You can deviate from those meetings. Then after that, you have to post them as special meetings. So.
Got it. Okay. Seems reasonable to me, yeah.
So yeah, we can just add it every time we bring the calendars forward, calendar updates.
Lisa, quick question for you. And this is an absurdly small quality of life improvement for me. So I don't want it to be a lot of work for you if it's not something that's easy. That is, no, it's not me. Okay. So the calendar is like pictograph, right? Is it in any way, is it easy to have like it itemized on like the day and then the time for the attached to this? And if it's not, does that make
Attached to that agenda item, like when it comes up quarterly, like more of a
well, see, it comes up
spreadsheet
like, yeah, it
list?
comes up
Oh,
like
this one, I see.
right? Or am I looking at the wrong thing?
Yeah, that's the annual one, yes.
Yeah, okay. And then like, would it be possible at the bottom to put like entries for each day that the meeting is, what the time? And again, absurdly low quality of life improvement for me, because I just take this thing and I throw it in AI and it gives me an Outlook calendar invite for each one. Then I throw it on my calendar so then I don't miss meetings. But like, again, I can make it work this way too. Just if
So to make sure I understand correctly, you'd more, after that,
yeah,
a picture at the bottom, then you'd more like a listing.
just a listing of the, yeah.
The date, the time.
Yeah.
Well, there's no
Not the topic.
topic yet,
Don't care
because there
about
is
the
one,
topic.
just date and time.
Date
A
and time.
listing that goes with it.
Yep. And if it's gonna be a absurd amount of work, don't worry about it. I can get around this.
No, I think, if I understand what you're saying, I think it's simple enough.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Let me just write this note. End of the annual calendar. All right, the next item that we received a question on really relates to page 3. If you go to page 3, I think it's, as page 1 is the cover sheet. But this was related to the issue of comments by noon on Thursday, with a preview coming out the day before, 2 days before. I wanted to just emphasize when that item was put in the protocols, and it's been a couple village boards now, the purpose of that was solely to be in front of, to just note here that there is an opportunity to call in. If you take a glance at that agenda, not read it, but the items on it, and you see something that maybe you have a question about, then you can call in before it's publicly posted. And the best way I can further explain this was the example I gave of a time when I knew it was used, this protocol. So there was an item that came before a commission, and it was generally known in the public, just talking to citizens and social media, that it was maybe going to be held at a different time in that citizen commission than what was coming out that week. And so the trustee called and said, hey, I think everyone thinks it's going to happen on this date, not this one. And in order not to create confusion over the weekend, because remember back then these meetings were also on Mondays, I think had a conversation with the manager, just wanted, and then maybe needed that extra time because I think trustees were also meeting with some of those residents over their issues of this item coming up. And that's why they said that, had a conversation. I really think this is better delayed. And there's also an advantage enough to post it until we, so don't create concern that something's coming out early and the residents may not be ready for it, or, meaning they didn't plan their schedule around it. That was the best example I can give when they noticed something and they wanted to, get ahead of that public posting that happens at the end of the week. So I don't know. I guess I'll leave it back to you if that helps, if there's a way to better explain it. As I said in my response, to you today too, questions, you are always welcome to ask questions, obviously, up until the meeting time. It's just a matter of how soon you ask them. We have a better shot of giving you a more thorough answer, getting ahead of it with staff, which I think it's mentioned in there too. But that was the purpose of this very particular short turnaround. It was more to just make note of when this agenda is going to go public and give you a chance to take a look at it. And I haven't seen it used very, often because for the most part, everyone kind of knows that certain things are coming up and kind of, looks to the village manager for that planning and coordination. So that's the best way I can explain it. If there's another way to say it, we could take another shot at it. If that's what you'd like me to do to try to emphasize that, I can read it out loud, how it reads now.
Yeah, I appreciate the. Oh, did you want to? No, I'll just say, appreciate the clarification on that. I think I was, I'm not really taking advantage of this option. Really, I don't even know when they get put on the legislate because I'm typically not checking that. I'm usually checking the public version of Legistar, although I know we get a little bit of a preview of it. But I guess when I'm looking at it, I kind of want to start to dive in, and I kind of know it's not finalized, and so I don't want to look at something before it's all the information is there. So I kind of just don't take advantage of this currently, but I'm not sure. I mean, other folks who've been on the board longer, if that's a thing, I guess I'll just say I'm fine with it as is if you want to keep it. I just haven't seen the need to use it yet.
I don't have any issue with the protocol as edited. I'm just wondering if the rationale behind it is to avoid public confusion. Should there be, if there isn't, and I have missed it, and I haven't missed it, a notification on the public version that says, this is still subject to change? Because I could see a person in the community seeing an agenda item and getting riled up or getting confused or having a reaction, and then that dispersing through the community, and then it's removed or edited, but they don't refresh, right? And then we have misinformation or unnecessary confusion. Is there a simple way that we could just sort of say, keep refreshing or come back for a final version, to sort of give ourselves a little disclaimer to the public that it remains a living document, because we've changed, removed things from consent just before taking roll, right? So like, just to have, it's sort of an effort to transparency too, to let the public know, like, it isn't final. Is that a way to get around what we're trying to do with this rule?
We can work on suggesting some language for you, and like the manager said, we can bring it back on consent, because it would have to be explained in a way that's still in line with the Open Meetings Act, so the actual item the actual items have to be locked down 48 hours in advance. But like you said, the order, the order, may change, but I would want to just run kind of just a sentence by legal and say something to that effect. Especially if an item comes out Thursday, maybe earlier, it could change on Friday, but we can work on it and send something to suggest, because I think that's what you're saying.
Not harder out.
Yeah, because I think the items have to be, it's the order of the items, but the actual items have to be always confirmed and posted 48 hours in advance. Mm-hmm.
Is it 48 hours or 48 business hours?
48 hours.
It's 48 hours.
That's what I thought. Just wasn't sure.
And that would be under this, I guess I could add it as a protocol, but it's definitely on our end on creating the agenda. Almost like another number here in this section about agenda preparation. Anything else on that one? I can move on to the next. I can go through these, and like I said, we can circle back. I have a few more. Creating a sentence on. The next one is related to, I think it's on page 11, very simple. I know there was a question about creating a VMO staff email. So there's a few references in the protocols about contacting the manager and having questions, communications. And this was just to clarify, we were adding all the individuals in the manager's office who are part of the communication group. So in lieu of that, I know it was much easier for people to have one email where everybody's included, then you just have to remember that and not put everyone's name in it individually. So you were correct, it was going to be VMO staff. It is not activated. That was the question, because you're just waiting for this to be confirmed.
I like this one so much. I tried to use it before. I guess these work, and I got to bounce back.
Sounds like a good thing.
I love aliases. It just makes life a little easier. It's one of those quality of life things. So, yeah, let's do it.
Kind of on that same note, let me just jump to, I think there was a second part to the question, or second question in the same area. It was two more down, like responding to emails sent to boards. There's a reference to, you were asking, what's the difference between all these emails being suggested? And it was a good question, because I've always known like board@oak-park.us has been for a long time, and it's short, it's simple. A lot of people in the community were using it. Then I realized through your question and just recently talking to others, there was this VOP board that also is starting to appear. And that was just something, as I noted in my response back today, you read it, that IT started creating some protocols in the organization with different departments, had included that for a variety of different reasons, but we can clear it up internally. Kind of the same thing with the clerk, having a clerk email. Like I was saying, in my notes from that day, I had just wrote, we need a VMO email, clear up the board email and the clerk email. So I guess it can go multiple ways. It was the idea of including the clerk so people know it's the board and the clerk and just recognizing the name. But board is quite, short. We can have two separate, or we can, that's why we're separating them out. Or you can just keep it all as one that just says, board, because it's simple. But it was really just a note from that day about us cleaning up emails and creating some, maybe a new way.
I mean, I would want to hear, whether the clerk wants to be included in all of the board emails, but I don't think there's a need necessarily for a separate board and clerk. It feels like it adds confusion if you're okay with being included in all the emails that we all get.
Yeah, no, I would say it's totally fine to continue to receive the emails. They're informative. I don't do much with them, but they're informative just to stay in the know. I think to have a separate board and clerk email would be really confusing to the public. Typically, what I hear in terms of feedback is that from the community is that they think that I'm on those emails anyway, and they don't quite realize that like leadership is like staff are on those emails too, to make sure that the responses are, you know, answered in a timely fashion. Yeah. So that's the only, I think that would just be confusing.
And then, is it possible to create an email where if I send an email to whatever it would be, where it would send it to VMO staff and BCC the board?
Oh.
Just, I don't know whether that's possible, but I just always forget to BCC the board, and then there's a second follow-up email. Sorry, this time board BCC'd. I didn't know if there's a easy easy way to shortcut that where I just have to put in one email and it separates it out correctly.
It's got new Outlook now. That might be something we can do in that.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah,
but
I've
I don't
never
know.
seen that
Yeah.
either. I could ask the question, but I would think no, but I doubt it.
If
But
it's
I can-
possible, that would be lovely. If not, you'll just receive the second email. Sorry, this time board BCC.
So it's called a hub transport rule. So you can do it. That's what I do, man. I got 30 years of this stuff. But you can do it. I don't know though if we have the right version of Outlook or right version of Exchange to facilitate it.
I'd love that.
I'll ask. Listening. And speaking of Alvin, you're kind of going back to one of your last questions, because he is part of the staff team that is working on, because they heard the conversation, especially during the last study session, about an automated system where you can go and you can see the questions being asked, you could see all the responses of the trustees, kind of get a status report. So that is coming, and they hope to have it completed in the second quarter. And we'll keep you posted, not sooner, so.
Wonderful.
Amazing. Love it.
And I think the last, one of the last questions I know we were thinking about, issue was brought up. There's the section where we're going to try to estimate times for agenda items. The whole idea is to keep, which there already is a pre-existing sentence, when staff creates an agenda, a realistic number of items on the agenda. But when you think about, and I think everyone's aware of this, there might be a better way to say, hey, if we have more than 2 agenda items, we just need to, one suggestion is to start the meeting always at 6:30. And let me explain this. So when you get to this section where it talks about how the village president will conduct the meeting, and you go through the process at first asking everybody for a comment, which is very typical, normal, but then you go through questions. Even if you just do the math with each other, 5 minutes times 7 people, for both of those sections, you're already like an hour, anywhere, depending on if you give everybody 3 minutes or 5 minutes and something longer, somewhere between, at least almost close to an hour to an hour and a half. And so I know we have staff practicing on estimating and been turning in things and what they estimate the conversation will be, but no one, off the top, adds on an hour to an hour and a half. All the estimates, are coming in, about 45 minutes or, 30 minutes. They have an idea. It might be more an hour. This is 2 hours. But I know it's hard to think through that. So it's just not built in that way. So it's almost like those two are in conflict, and we thought maybe another better way to do it is just say if there's more than 2 items, let's start the meeting at 6:30 if there's no executive session, for example. So just something to think about what your reaction to that is. I know that was new, but it was something that just came up when you start adding time for the questions and being realistic if everyone was to ask a question and provide a comment.
Well, I can certainly talk about how we can shorten some of the meetings, but is it difficult for folks to make it, is a 6:30 start difficult for anyone's schedule?
6:30 is not a problem, but 6 gets hard with like the kids and all that kind of stuff. And if we have executive session, my understanding is it's always 7, and if we have executive session, that eats into the other end of it. So and we have executive session frequently, I'd say, not every time, but at least 50% of the time. So it could make things difficult, make those 6 o'clock meetings more common, which could be challenging for me with younger kids. Yeah.
I think it's difficult when we change the start time without a rationale like executive session at the community level. People come in and don't realize, they start to count on 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock. So to just move it up because we have a slightly longer meeting, unless we're going to start moving and move it up to 6:30 and starting at 6:30 every day or every time, I think we leave at 7.
So we can leave the protocols as written, they are a guide, but just know that those estimates, maybe we're gonna just put in 15 minutes, for that board dialogue, but it is what it is, it's a best guess.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's just sorry, just speak to it. Yeah, it's 2 items. I mean, that's 75 to 90 minutes potentially if we use all the time that's allowed in the protocols. So you got 2 items. That's 2 items. So you're looking at, you start at 7, and if you have 75 to 90 minutes per item, you're done. Right, and we have a very significant, pretty aggressive agenda. I do anticipate, some of our, goals starting to shrink a little bit. But we do contemplate some very significant policy items that require a lot of discussion sometimes. So 2 items would be a full agenda. And we're talking about 2 regular items, whether it's a study session or a regular item that's a non-routine issue.
So are we conceding right now that 2 hours or the 2 agenda items is all we can handle in 3 hours? Because I think, folks, there's several things we can do to do this. The sending our questions in, which I know we're all getting better at, okay, in advance. We really need to come to the meeting actually ready to vote, where what we're doing is sharing with the public why we're voting the way we're voting. There's always going to be that time where we want to leave space to learn from each other, but what we don't want to be doing is creating a practice of where we're actually deciding based on the dialogue and discussion at the board table and, and debating still. We need to be communicating in between meetings so that it's less a dialogue. And the thing is, I think that this board actually likes to talk to each other, that we like the conversation, and it's become rewarding for us. But it is overly burdensome for people who have to work the next morning at 8 o'clock in the morning here at the Village Hall. So I don't want to concede that 2 agenda items is all we can handle in a 3-hour meeting. I want us to continue to work towards being more efficient. That also means watching the commission meetings. If it's related to our agenda item, so that we're not asking the same questions that were asked and answered at the commission level. And continuing to have more conversations with our village manager staff on a regular basis. We can still be extremely transparent to the community, still be responding to public comment, and leave room for changing of our minds, but I need everybody to be walking in here pretty much ready to vote on every item on the agenda. That is the intention.
Yeah, well, I think if Chibi and Jim and Jenna would stop talking so much.
That's a joke because he knows that he and I talk too much.
Brian, nobody needed that explained.
Just wanted to clarify for the public.
Oh, for the folks at home. For the folks at home.
Explain again.
Okay. So Brian and Corey.
We did this for the good of everyone.
However, I do appreciate that, and it's not a criticism, that staff is only trying to help us right now. So, yes.
Yeah, and I will say I don't think we should say that we're limiting ourselves to just 2 agenda items. I think that I have seen many times where we have a loaded agenda where we will fly through many agenda items without much discussion. It's only when we get to meatier issues where there's some divided opinion, or where we need to, really pull something apart that that we end up with more discussion. And so I think putting a number of items rather than a staff estimate, I think having a staff estimate that's broken into presentation time and sort of predicted amount of time for Q&A, because some items, the presentations do stretch to be quite long, particularly when we're receiving consultant reports and they want to demonstrate the value that they've provided. Those presentation items can stretch to 30, 40 minutes on their own. And so I think that splitting those things up and then, maybe communicating to us in that preliminary agenda, like, here's how much time we expect this to take, even if those estimates aren't on the public agenda, that helps us understand, oh, they're not actually expecting many questions on this. I need to flag that this is an issue that I'm expecting to want to have more discussion on.
Okay, so that does kind of bring me to, sometimes presentations are very, very brief. We know that too. Okay, so can the time estimates be visible to the village board only, not necessarily to the public? Okay, and I'd like also people, everybody, as to be, can we communicate what exactly it is that would help us be briefer in our dialogue too? Like the legislative document. For me, the legislative document, the cover sheet, should have, the history of the item, and it typically does, but the commission meetings that are relevant, this, I want to be able to get the lion's share of the information that is really needed to be a decision maker from that legislative document. I want staff to be kind of summarizing for us, if possible, in that legislative document, what we're going to see in the support documents. I think that's helpful to the public. I think that helps us, refrain from getting in the weeds and pretending that we've got the degrees that y'all do. And bring us straight to the level of decision maker. Okay? Where we're voting. And it's, all the other support materials are there and we're being transparent, but I'd like to see a little more meat in the legislative cover sheet.
Yeah.
Okay, I know Jim, so go ahead.
I'll speak to that too, because I think it's kind of nuanced.
I'll just add that I had that happen recently with the library IGA, where I relied on the document. I don't always read all the IGAs. Some of them are very, very lengthy. And it didn't have all the information. And then I made assumptions based upon that, which turned out to be not correct. So that kind of a thing where the more the better, we can cram in there so we can, and then go to the supporting documents if we need to. And I have a couple other comments, but I'll let.
I think it's great feedback. What I want to offer you guys is that, just working in various communities approach this in different ways. So, for example, some communities may say, hey, look, we're just going to do, we're going to have like 2 nights out of the 4 nights that we meet just for study sessions only, which tend to be more complex, involved topics. And you probably spend a lot more time on those. And so we say, hey, we're going to limit on those study session nights no more than 2 topics, because we know these topics take longer. The other nights, we're just going to be voting on items that have already been baked, right? So there's that. There's also communities who say, oh, you know what, let's spend 15, 20 pages, articulating an item, right, and spend a lot of time. But what it does is it could actually slow the agenda down, right, scheduling. So items that it may slow the pace down a little bit. I think what was in place, I know when I got here, we've gotten into this cadence to making continuous improvements each time we have a break to try to frame the agenda items in a way where we can provide as much information as possible and the categories of information and then the background material so that you can work through them pretty quickly and get enough information. And then if there are any questions, then there's an opportunity, obviously, with the preview to follow up with staff. You can always meet with staff and so forth. And I think the posture is to try to create a dynamic pace where we're pushing and trying to go as fast as we can, but at the same time trying to provide quality information. And so there is sort of a management approach to that. And so I just wanted to articulate that because I do have some, right here in Illinois, and this stuff is public, so I do have some experience where you really dedicate a lot of time to the memorandums, and it does slow the agenda down a little bit, right? And this is not the only community that I've been in where you try to strike a balance between how much are you putting in those memorandums versus trying to move the agenda forward. So this is not the only community that's tried to work on it in that fashion. And I think what I've tried to do with the team is, just evaluating from, year to year, the kind of questions that we're getting. Let's see if we can enhance the frame of the agenda and the content in the agenda so that we're getting the right information and summarizing it enough. But I think, above all, I think the feedback is great feedback. We continue to work to try to provide, complete information, and we're going to continue to do that. And then if there are any questions ever, obviously, we welcome those questions, I think, as presented. I think it was important for me to just provide that lens because there's different ways to approach it. And I think with our agenda, the way that it's been for the last few years, where we've had a lot of topics, a lot of heavy topics, important topics, the desire to move fast, you try to strike a balance between okay, are we going to spend 8 hours on producing the content and then narrowing the agenda down, and then we don't consider as many items during the course of the year, versus let's find that sweet spot where we can, make sure we're pumping out the items, but at the same time providing quality information. So just wanted to offer that as context to discussion.
I just want to piggyback on that because it kind of touched on something else that I was thinking about and sort of related to this, but not super related enough to be talked about at the board table, Mr. Attorney. So one of the things that I've thought about just since I've had this job is that it would be very beneficial if it was easy to understand how an item that came before us got before us based on previous board's actions, not necessarily based on what staff is doing to bring it forward, but if there's an ordinance that we're modifying and it went into effect in 1995, it'd be great to have some context around what drove it and what modified it along the way to get here. And I don't think that staff should be creating that along the way, but I do think we're supposed to be doing a racial equity evaluation of all of our ordinances, encompassing that history in those ordinances, so there's that historical summary attached to the ordinance so that it can be referenced. Would be a great idea if we could somehow work that in together, because I think that context sometimes helps. I like to know why a thing exists before I tear it down. Yes.
Yeah, that's great feedback too. So when you look at the current template, if you look at some old templates, the prior board action, I think, was at the back. We put it up to the front. Yeah. And I think that section is trying to get at that. I think what I'm hearing is that you'd like to see more information or...
Yeah, and it's hard to tell what's relevant, right? I don't want to say we go back 5 years, right? I want to see the relevant information. I don't know how to say, give me the relevant information without giving me everything that you have. But I don't think staff should be doing that on a week-to-week basis, right? I think it should be something that should exist alongside the ordinances, right, as part of them, that history, and then it just kind of can just be surfaced as necessary.
Like legislative summary.
Sort of, yeah.
And you're not just
Like if I go,
looking-
if I go to Congress, right? If I go to Congress and I look at a bill, I can see, even state of Illinois, right? I can see all the permutations that it went through, all the committees, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff gets recorded. Be great if we had that somewhere too, where we can look at that.
Right, and particularly since the village began using the Legistar system, all of those cover memoranda are easily accessible. So the kind of, you're talking about the kind of legislative history of Congress. And,
Yeah.
and so for the more recent items that have been put in since Legistar was adopted, it's very easy for staff to get to those. Going past the point when Legistar was used is very difficult because then you have to go into minutes archives, and board meeting minutes only tell so much of the story, and the staff memoranda prior to them would only exist on paper or in PDF. So I think all that's to say, for things that are in Legistar, it's easy to carry those forward.
Gotcha.
Which is only 2014.
Got it. Okay. So do we need to expand the digital archiving project that we're working on? It sounds like that might go hand in hand for some of that stuff that's paper only.
Yeah, and how that is accessed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
archiving is one thing, but then making it searchable and findable and linkable, right, is
Yeah.
another thing. And yeah, Legistar does have the ability to make, as I think was referenced, you can say related items, right? And you can refer to those, and sometimes that shows up in the legislative item, but as was mentioned, it only goes back about 10 years. But if we had a place to search for all that stuff, you could much more easily link to those things and have that context. And I guess that kind of gets to what President Schema was talking about. If you want to see the resources, right, here's a link to a video of, the Plan Commission meeting about this, right? And you could, it's just a hyperlink at the end of the day, as long as we build the systems to be accessible in that way. So.
Yeah, and we're a little spoiled, right? Like we've got President Skaman here, who's was the clerk previous, right? So she's got a lot of history here. We've got Trustee Taglia, who also has sat here at this table for a bit too. We've got Clerk Waters, right? There's a little bit of folks here who's got history and have been sitting at this table or in this room and following some of these things. So sometimes when they come forward, there's a little bit more enrichment that comes along with it. I think there's probably some enrichment in some of those PDFs and Word documents and paper documents that's in crates somewhere, right? It'd be great to have that too, just to surface it.
Okay, so the how has already been determined as a little bit tricky, but we're in the works, working towards it with archiving and AI on our website and other ways of searching this. But I just want to be clear then, for direction to staff, what we're looking for. You're not just looking for a list of dates that things were discussed. You're looking for that summary as to the why.
Correct.
Yeah.
But also importantly, right? I'm not looking to have staff do this on a week-to-week basis, right? I don't think that would be time efficient.
But I mean, I appreciate this conversation in a very because it's really speaking to avoiding unintended consequences as we make decisions, and respecting our history too. Go ahead, Jim.
Two brief comments, and there are more comments. I don't know that they necessarily apply. Item 6B addresses responding to emails sent to the entire village board. Occasionally, at least I get someone will reach out to me, and I'll try to connect someone to an answer and get something answered through village staff, through the village manager's office. But I don't know sometimes when it gets resolved, and I don't maybe I don't need to know every time, but sometimes you make a connection, someone has a problem, and you want to help them fix it, and you put them in the connection, and you don't know how it got resolved. So, and then it happens again, and you like, what was the outcome, and how did it happen? So I don't know that this really addresses the entire village board, as opposed to like one member asking a question of staff. Oh. So, and there's a little difference there, but I think there's value in a similar way, acknowledging, and sometimes they do it, but it's not 100% maybe. Some acknowledging that this has been addressed and it's been resolved. I don't need to know all the details, but just that it was taken care of, right? So, I mean, I'm not trying to get into the business of the staff, but if I make a connection, it's good to know that it was finished and it met its goal. So that's one item. I don't know that that needs to be addressed. The other thing is, just as a question, sorry, you want to say something or? Okay.
Just make sure we're prepared to respond, but go ahead.
You can keep going and we'll respond to all at once.
Oh, yeah, just one other comment is that standards for public emergencies. So we used to have a protocol, and I know I've talked to you about this before, where if there was an emergency in the village, we get notified under certain criteria. If there's some terrible event, the board would want to be notified. Is that been removed? Is that, because this standards for public emergencies is more forward-facing, is how the board reacts when they're asked about an event in the village, as opposed to being notified of an event. And I just wondered, we used to have that, and maybe it was taken out, and Lisa probably remembers, like if something happened in the village, there was a tragic event, right, and there's some certain.
Yeah, I can respond on that one.
Okay,
But
so
do
that's
you
it.
have more?
No,
Oh,
that's
just
it.
those two?
Those two, and I'm done.
Okay, so I've noticed recently, when staff is responding to a question of a constituency that we've all received, you will get an email saying this was staff's response.
Yes.
And that's actually very helpful.
Yes.
You're asking that to be kind of across the board. When a situation's resolved and maybe takes a little bit of research, a little bit of back and forth with staff, just kind of that, okay, dear board, this situation was resolved.
However, whatever form, so there's.
Just so that if we get an email a month later, we, or we want to, because a certain amount of time will go by, and we'll have assumed it's taken care of.
Correct.
And then we might get another email that says, hey, this is still a challenge.
Or it took another turn, just so we're
Okay.
understanding what happened.
All right. So I'll let staff respond to that in a minute. And then the community alerts. Yeah, I think Jim and I are the historians here, and with Lisa sometimes. If there was a unfortunate passing, we would get a phone call versus an email. Right now, we get email alerts. Is that what you're talking about?
I'll give an example, a bank robbery, right? There's a big, there was an issue a while back where there was an armored car was held up. So what we don't want to have happen is people come to us asking us questions. What do you think about that? Or what's happening? What are you doing about that? And I'm like, doing about what? I don't know anything about it. So those kind of things, I don't know how you quantify them.
You want to try to define a threshold, or what's
threshold.
an email and what's a phone call?
Yeah, the phone calls are understood. We get the phone calls, and they're usually not good, but we get them, and we have to, right? We have to as a board. But these are things that are happening in the village where people would then come to us and come to you and say, what are you doing about this? Or what do you know about this?
Okay, so we're
And
talking
we
about a
need to
third
be-
category.
Well, I don't want to make it more complex, but I'm just suggesting that there's value in trustees, some sort of a notification, because we get asked and we need to know. And I'm not trying to be getting into your business, but we need to know on certain things, so that's all.
Yeah.
Brief.
I think the examples would help. I think what we try to do with the VM alerts, which I don't think existed until I got here, is to respond quickly as soon as we have responsive information, put that information out there so that we can get something going, right? And the intent is to provide updates until the event is closed out. And certainly, if it's a significant event, you will get a phone call from me, right? Sometimes I can't put things in the email. It's not appropriate to do it. You'll get a phone call. But I think what we try to do is be coordinated in communication on the alerts. When things happen, try to get something out as soon as we get it. There are some times we get information from either one of you before we get it sometimes. And we create the alert, right? We confirm it and create the alert. But I think it is helpful to get the examples, because if there are some examples where you think, oh, this reaches a threshold where we think we should be all getting a phone call, or I don't know if there's something else you're looking for, like if you want to get involved in the incident and help resolve it, or,
So I'll tell you what in those cases, right, with a phone call especially, what I'm looking for is, A, the thing happened, right? B, what we're doing about it. C, what I specifically need to do, right? If whatever that is, just so that I know if am I supposed to be at the Village Hall press conference? Am I, are we not showing up as a board? Is it just gonna be the president, right? Like, or whatever, right? Like, just to know what the protocol is gonna be, so that if I'm in Oak Brook shopping with my family and I get a call from you, Kevin, I need to know I need to jump in the car and head back to Oak Park or not.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'd be helpful to know like what you're, I mean, because in instances where I feel like you need to be there or, hey, look, you need to do this.
Yeah.
Certainly there's no discomfort in letting you know that.
No, I know, absolutely. Yeah, and so anytime I think anything that rises to a phone call level, right, I think should have attached to it, all right, and this is what's expected of you, right?
Or maybe even a please don't take a call from a reporter.
That too, right? Like, and right, and I typically don't, but, but yeah.
We would like to be one voice and staff will be working on a statement, that kind of advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so it feels like the really serious stuff is understood.
Yes.
It feels like what you're talking about,
A big
Jim,
fire. A big fire or
is
tragedy, like in a car crash.
a deadly car
a
accident.
bicycle, whatever the situation. We should be aware.
Somebody, or, yeah, okay.
Big fire.
So what we understand here is that with the village manager form of government, it's the village manager's job to respond to that. But what you want is you don't want to get caught off guard by somebody in the press calling and saying, hey, what do you think of this? And you're like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, or a
doesn't
member of the
happen
public. So I do think that maybe a little bit of time and care, because it seems like it's the borderline stuff that you're asking for, not the super serious stuff that
Right.
we're already
addressing.
have systems for.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay. And so then the reason to have this discussion then is so that we understand the expectations, so that there isn't sourness that proceeds, that, when you felt like you didn't know. Okay. Now, can I share a brief conversation that Trustee Eater and I had earlier, just because it might fit into context? Okay, just because some of you probably already know this, so this isn't this is just because it seems relevant. You all can take calls from the press that are about your response to, in a vote, your position on anything, okay? You own your vote, you own your opinion, you are duly elected, you serve at large, okay? If it is something that is not related to policy right here, but a tragedy in the community, you are referring that to myself and Kevin Jackson, not taking that interview. And if the press or a television station are calling you and asking for your responses, your feelings on an uptick in carjackings or something as an example, you still want to be very, very careful, because you can speak for yourself, but you are also servants of this community, and you are responsible for our reputation at large as well. So you do, so we have a communications team for a reason. They will work with us on statements that are consistent and honest and not damaging of our reputation. So I really do advise you to, you'd never have to ask me for permission if you can take an interview on your independent vote on something. But please avoid speaking, and also just remember, though, that some of the teamwork that we've created with this board that I think we're all proud of is that once a vote is done, we are a unified board. And we are moving forward. We are moving on, right? So please, recognize that. But you have every right to explain your vote to your constituency. But then when there's a path forward to move on, we are one board. Any questions?
Not a question, but I just add that what I typically like to add is that I don't speak for the board to any conversation where I get asked, what about a board thing? I speak for myself. I don't speak for board. I say it explicitly so that if I'm talking to like a reporter, it gets written down versus them assuming that they're just getting my opinion. So I just like to put that out there. And it was something I was taught when I joined this board. I forget who taught it to me. It might have been Jim. But but yeah, it's just something I was taught. Always tell folks that you don't speak for the board because you don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I also just don't want you to take what I'm saying and that you can't all speak to the press because you're duly elected, you know. It's just that thing that is, you know, it's more overarching about the health of the community, and it can be damaging to our reputation, and we have to be a unified voice. You can add.
I hesitate to add, because I don't want to go backwards, but I do want to just, we're talking about public communications, communicating with the media. But even those alerts are a form of public communication that I send out. And they are, you know, we add as much information to those alerts as we can at the time, and it creates a unified message around the issue until we update it and add more and more and more. Particularly when there are issues around, you know, there could be legal questions and issues of public safety and crime, you know. So those messages are really intentional in trying to create a unified voice. If there is a need for, you know, for the trustees to do something specifically around those incidents, we would definitely put that in there, or I would call you and let you know. So I just wanted to point that out while we were talking about public communication with the media and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, speak to your platform, answer all those questions, all that stuff is great, you know, and absolutely. Go ahead.
I think just to follow up though on something that Corey said regarding, you know, if there's a press conference or something along those lines, just explicit direction either way, like your presence is requested if able, or you know, we're trying to keep this limited to, you know, this list of staff leads, because I do think there was some sensitivity after some tragedies that have occurred in the recent past, where some people showed up at certain things, others didn't, and folks were wondering, like, did I not get the memo that I was supposed to be there, and vice versa. And so I think just so that we can show up as a board as a whole when that is helpful to show respect and unity and those kinds of things, explicit direction either way. We are holding a press conference. Board is not expected to attend, or you know, board attendance is preferred. You know, something along those lines that gives us guidance at the very least.
Okay, so then even to go back to Jim's suggestions of sometimes something like, you know, hold up of an armored car reaches a level of where we might get questions through Facebook from, you know, whatever, that just wants. So then the perception that a board member be less than aware is something that could make you feel uncomfortable. So then we're creating just this team where we're not trying, of mutual respect for the expectations that our community has on us, as well as on the village manager. And so it's all with sensitivity and, you know, open dialogue. It helps avoid any misperceptions as on respect, right? Okay? All right. Yeah, you know, with a lot of grace. because things are moving, sometimes rather quickly. But from this point forward, we know that that's the goal, right? Is that we're working together. Okay. All right. I don't know how you put all that in protocols, but you're good.
So I think then we will bring this back at the next meeting on the consent agenda with your feedback, since there are a few things that we need to just change.
I do think it's nice to see it not all redlined and final read through, and yeah, that. So then we're done?
Anything further? We're all good? No questions?
Okay, Corey?
Sorry,
That wasn't an adjournment. That was, go ahead, Corey. Floor is yours.
It is, hold on, finding it. I had it earlier, I lost it. It is. Yeah, okay, here we go. Section B7. Bingo. About motion and second. I think that's where it is. So.
Page 3.
Yeah, page.
3.
3, thank you. This has in here, this states in here specifically about finance funding requests. And I've been going back and forth on this a little bit. I'm just wondering if funding requests is too narrow, or if everything that goes through a motion in a second should be discussion first and then come back, even if it comes back on consent. And I don't know if I'm sold on this yet. I'm talking this through. But my thought on it is that often if the meeting's on Tuesday, you get a motion in a second on Friday for something to be included on Tuesday's meeting. Staff might not have enough time to provide any kind of analysis to go along with that. I don't know that. Sometimes I'm comfortable with that. I'm fine with that, depending on what the thing is. Most of the time, I'm probably going to want to know what staff has to say about it, right? And so if we're only having the one meeting, motion second, meet, vote, adopt, it kind of precludes staff having an ability to weigh in. And I think based on, and this kind of hit my head last week when talking to Rob about LRS and RFPs and such, and we were all kind of like, yeah, we should just go straight to RFP. And then he was like, whoa, hold on. There's some stuff we didn't talk about. And it's like, you're right, there's stuff we didn't talk about. And how do we know, when there's stuff that we didn't talk about before we're voting, right? And I'd like to be thorough, make sure that when I'm voting on something, I'm voting on the thing based on all the available information that I can have. And I think sometimes that's going to be hard when we go motion and second on a Friday, Tuesday vote, adopt. So again, talking it through, not quite sure if it matters if it's not a funding thing, but maybe it does.
Do you want to speak to it?
I think one suggestion would be we could change how this is written to clarify that that's how it would occur. There's always going to be a second meeting, and then you could read it and see how you respond to it. Because when you look at the way it's written, it says this request is considered a discussion-only agenda item. It's inherent in there, but I think what you're saying is that in that discussion first time, you could be making decisions. You just want to make it clear that you're really not going to make a final decision until it comes back.
Yes.
And I think that's the part that's missing, because there's so many different examples. They're all a little different, right? The motions you've had.
Yeah.
So it's hard to put them all in, they're all not exactly the same, but what could be at least said is that all items will come back for a final vote at a subsequent meeting. And you could react to that.
You have a suggestion.
With a full staff analysis.
Right, but can we, and I'll turn it right over to Brian in just a second. Can we add something that we waive that need if necessary? Because
Yeah.
there are times when when we might be responding in a more emergent situation where time matters. I mean, I think what we've learned and what we understand is truly being an efficient board is respecting the village manager form of government, and in having the full background and data and analysis consistently with all items that we vote on, and respecting the professionals that work with us to help us accomplish our goals. But we're not going to be able to talk about every example of when, and so if we can just have the ability to consciously waive that, then I think we can cover all scenarios.
Yeah, I think an expectation of, sorry, Brian, just real quick, I think an expectation that something's going to come back with the ability to waive it probably fits what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to to say when I raised my hand. We need to be able to say, unless otherwise stated. Like the board can agree to act because there have been recent examples where we were responding to something urgent happening, say, in our parking lot, and we needed to take an action quickly as a board to address that, where we don't want it to say everything's only discussion and must come back. Obviously, we have the inherent right to waive that without putting it in here, but I think putting it in here explicitly is sensible.
And that's also an example where our staff was with us and ready to take the same type of action, but I think it's just only fair to talk about how that's what we want to work towards.
Yeah.
But still, I think we just can't predict all situations.
Yeah. I think I think this is good. Just in general, I think give ourselves credit. It tends to work. One of the things I would add as context to this is that we want to have the opportunity, whenever we're getting direction through these motions, to be able to communicate to the board, like what are the expectations for timeline and so forth. Particularly, when you have an existing workload and existing priorities that the staff is already working, and we want to make sure that, if there's a decision about like, oh, we want to accelerate this, we want to have the opportunity to say, hey, well, we can do that for you, but it might have these impacts, right? In the emergency situations, I'm going to go back to that because I think that's important. What just came up is like there are situations that come up, but I think what works best in those situations, and we've seen some of that recently, is there are some conversations with the management when those situations arise that adds context to the motion, and you're able to get some direct communication with the manager around some of those issues. So by the time the motion does, even though it's accelerated, the decision is accelerated, there's been some conversation to create some clear understanding around that emergency or that urgent situation. So, yeah.
Okay, so we're making that one across the board more generically inclusive of all types of motions, but with the opportunity to waive that second meeting under board direction. Right? Okay. All right. And anything else, Lisa?
I was just going to mention, just to clarify that since it's already Tuesday night, that it won't be out on the next agenda because that's about to go out, but it'll be on the one after that, so February 3rd.
No, there's no meeting on February 3rd. It says holiday, but what holiday is February 3rd?
I'll have to look.
Yeah. It's your birthday? It's your birthday.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I know there's no meeting on February 3rd.
The calendar does, the calendar doesn't reflect the meeting on February 3rd. I was just inquiring about this today, so I don't know.
We can check and get back to you. Okay. Standing here this moment, I don't.
Sure, it's going to be something completely obvious. I'm going to be like, what? Okay, forget I said that.
I was just running through the holidays and just can't.
Yeah, so we could check, and so is this a consensus that, if we can find out quickly, that'd be great, like, because maybe we have a consensus to meet, if not on the 3rd, on the 4th, because I think we were trending towards,
I can,
I think we were trending
if I
towards
had it
skipping that meeting
in
and
front of
going
me,
to the
it
10th.
might be the legal department,
Oh,
the
it's an
new
election
law
day.
that came into
Oh,
effect.
That's
thank
right.
you.
The Open Meetings Act was amended to disallow meetings on election days, even when no ballots are being cast in the village. February 3rd is an election day.
Okay, thank you. Right. I'll be watching for that blue wave. Okay. Had to ask. Okay. So nothing more that you wanted to highlight for us on the protocols?
Nothing.
Okay, very good. So then we are at call to board and clerk. Christina?
Pass.
Pass.
Pass. Pass.
Pass.
I'm going to recognize Martin Luther King Jr. Day, specifically because first, I'm grateful that we had an opportunity to reflect, even though we weren't together yesterday here at the start of this meeting, and to remind ourselves that Dr. King was murdered in 1968, and the holiday didn't exist for like another 15 years, and there was a lot of opposition to even recognizing his contribution in leadership of the civil rights movement. A lot of us talk, every year around how his legacy has been whitewashed. That's one of the things. It wasn't always a given to honor Dr. King and his contributions. And although I don't think anybody would disagree that it's important to recognize Dr. King every year with a national holiday, the making official of a national holiday in honor of Dr. King really didn't do much more. There was no money appropriated to any kind of repair in that honoring of him. And so I just think that's an important thing for us to remember, because a lot of the work that we've committed to doing at this board is in furtherance of reparations and repair and fulfilling more of the legacy that was made short by Dr. King's life.
I'll just attempt to plug our event, OPCAN, at the CRC on Monday, the 26th of January, so less than a week away, bringing clean energy home to Oak Park. It's a free event. Everyone here is invited and welcome to join. We'll be hearing from Sarah Moskowitz, the Executive Director of CUB, Citizens Utility Board, as well as Jen Walling, who's the CEO of Illinois Environmental Council, and they're going to talk about the recently passed Clean Reliable Grid Act and the transit bill that happened back in, I think, October of last year. So everyone's invited. We'll have a little bit of food and a lot of good times. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the OPCAN starts at 6:30 at the CRC? Yes. And then the Government 101 is here at 6 o'clock?
At the museum, historical museum.
At the museum, historical museum.
That's where we're kicking it off, yes.
Okay, good. So I'll be able to go from one to the other pretty quickly, but invite members of our community who are signed up for that. They need to be signed up for that Government 101?
Yes, we have confirmed. We're at the limit. We have 30 participants, so we're expecting to commit to the 9-week program, kicking it off next week on the 26th with the orientation introduction, and we're happy to have you for a few minutes we can to do that, and then we'll follow up on the 2nd. It's going to take an opportunity to announce that we have a night dedicated to elected officials on February 2nd, so we are going to be advancing email communication and also trying to lock you in on the calendars if you're available to participate in that class that night. The classes are 2 hours long. 6 o'clock, 6 to 8:30, 2.5 hours. So February 2nd.
Okay, so there is a Government 101 class that is at this point full with 30 participants, and that is beginning Monday, May or January 26th, for nine sessions. And all of us will have the time, opportunity then to participate actively with that course. Anyone, and hopefully this is something that is ongoing. Hopefully we talk about things that we can also put on our website that share learning, health, how to get more involved in your community, which is also something that we learned from Dr. Martin Luther King, and we practice in his memory. Okay, so thank you for that. I think this is a big achievement. I think it's something wonderful that, we're doing. And so I was going to share that, and I thank Jim for reminding me that I should take some time at some point to read the proclamation from the Senate in honor of Francis Sullivan. But it was also Monroe Sullivan, John's dad, my father-in-law, who rode in a cab from the O'Hare to, with Martin Luther King, to an interfaith coalition meeting to talk about justice. And he came from a very activist family. On Fran's memorial plaque says activist, and I'm very proud to have known them both as I did. But this afternoon at 2 o'clock, which was the 1-year anniversary of the current administration, and so there was a walkout at the high school. And there was also a walkout at Kindness Creators Daycare, which is at Oak Park Arms, that my granddaughter is part of. She's holding a sign that says "Lead with Peace" with her rainbow unicorn hat, and we had a lot of fun. And so I'm just, it's really great that we, are recognizing the importance of teaching our young people the need to stand up for what is right. And yes, yeah, terribly cute. Okay, so it might have been, but very inspiring. Very, very inspiring to be around those young people this morning or this afternoon at 2 o'clock. I don't know, it felt like morning. For Martin, or in this moment in time. Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And my gratitude goes out to Kindness Creators.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No.
Have a good evening, everybody.
I was so worried that I wasn't going to be able to get this stuff through customs.